makes me sick. The desire for control. Worrying is actually a form of control. We think somehow if I feel this way, it's going to help. It doesn't. It's this weird sense of control. Like when people go bowling, you release the ball and then you start gyrating and leaning because you want it not to go in the gutter or whatever. It's like the ball's gone, man. But you still have this sense of control somehow. Like you still have some input on where the ball goes. Yeah. But that's such a human thing. Like outsourcing the worry to somebody else. So just knowing they're worried about it, I can just focus on this other stuff. I'm like, that's brilliant, but it's scriptural. We're literally told to cast our cares on him because he cares for us. Like literally you can outsource it to God.
On this episode, I'm so excited to have our guest, Brant Hansen. It's an incredible episode. Brant is an author, he's a speaker, he is a renowned radio host, and he is an author of one of the top-selling books, Unoffendable, which I highly recommend. Brant opens up about his struggle with fame, anxiety, trauma, and how he stayed focused on God through the entire process. There's a lot of wisdom in this episode, some humor, some fun conversations, and some depth that with a lot of other guests we really haven't experienced. So I'm excited for you to hear what Brant Hansen has to share. Let's dive in.
I don't control. I cannot handle the election right now. It's not up to me. Like I can't figure all this stuff out. There's all these things we're anxious about. We can't do anything about it. We can't control it. So leave it to God. And literally the genius of what Paul's saying there. He says, be anxious for nothing, pray about everything, tell God what you need, and then thank him for what he's done. And then the peace of God, which exceeds our understanding, will guard our hearts in Christ Jesus.
My name is Skylar Lewis, and I've helped thousands of men and their families step into their God-given potential. And this podcast is all about that. We bring on some of the highest performing men in the areas of faith, family, fitness, and finances, where they share their success principles, they share their struggles, they share the specific things that they have done to build a life of abundance and kingdom impact. Don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get to the episode.
For this next episode, I'm excited to have Brant Hansen. He is an incredible man of God, and he's the author of a book called Unoffendable and 5 other books. He really dives into masculinity in this episode and how God can show up, how to work through anxiety, and we talk through a ton of just really incredible topics. I'm excited to have Mr. Brant Hansen on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. And this is nice. I like what you've done with the place. This is great.
Yeah, you are the first official guest.
I can smell the paint.
Yes, exactly.
It's
yes.
really awesome.
If you pass out, we'll figure that out.
Good. Yeah.
or start talking funny.
Yeah.
Then we'll know it's from the toxic fumes.
Yeah, good. I love that.
Yeah, you're the first guest in here, and actually you're the first guest that, like I was mentioning, that we've had twice. So I really enjoyed our last conversation, and you're just such a deep thinker, but you know how to bring lightheartedness into the conversation. I think it's very powerful.
Thank you.
We have some pretty, and what's funny is you were just speaking at our event today, our convention, RuckCon, and so our guy hit you up and said, "Hey, you willing to go on a podcast at 7:00 at night?" And so here we are.
Well, I fly out tomorrow for LA in the morning. And like literally, the timing couldn't be better. Instead of just sitting around the hotel, like doing nothing, like this is great. It's perfect. So I'm like, okay. Yeah. So your guy sent a car for me. I just saw this guy named Nkufu who was going to pick me up in a Lincoln Continental, and I don't even know where it's going. So I guess I trust these people because I don't know the guy who's picking me up. I don't know where we're going. I don't know how far it is. Like, I'll just get into a car.
I appreciate that.
Just get into a Lincoln Continental and see what happens.
Oh man, that's great. Well, yeah. I'm glad we have. I feel like we're building a relationship, and you've really blessed our audiences. You spoke at a previous RuckCon, and that was, I believe, one of the most impactful talks that we've had. It was incredible, and so. Yeah, it's good to have. I mean, how many books have you written now?
I think 6.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
And I remember a guy saying something years ago, and I think it was Dallas Willard. I saw him speak. I was young.
You saw Dallas speak.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Because Renovation of the Heart is a book that we've based a lot of Rise of Kings after. And that process of spiritual formation.
We have like this mind. Like, I get what you're doing.
Interesting.
Because he has been incredibly influential for me. But at the time I saw him, I wasn't smart enough or wise enough to realize what he was saying. I didn't get it. But I did remember him saying that he didn't ask God for a platform. He asked him to give him things to say.
Wow.
Because a lot of people have a platform, they really don't have anything to say.
And I feel like there's so many people talking on social media that don't actually have
No, they
anything to
don't.
say. They're just saying things.
It's kind of exposed that they don't really have anything to say. And I'm in radio, and there's a lot of radio people that got into it because they need attention. But they don't have much to say. That's what can happen. And I honestly feel like each time I write a book or something, I'm like, well, I've said everything I have to say. Like, that's it. But then I ask God, please, give me more things, if it's a blessing to people. And he's been really faithful with that. Even on a day-to-day basis with my radio show, I have to come up with 20 things to say every day. That's fresh.
Wow.
Because I'm syndicated, I can't be local. I'm on at different drive times, depending on the market or whatever. So I can't, there's all these things are taken out of your hand. You can't be that timely. But I can talk about things of the heart in a way that's really relevant because he supplies me that every day. I ask him for my day's resources. It's literally, please give me content today because I don't know what I'm going to say. And he's been really faithful.
That's interesting. I'm on that journey of content creation. That's actually one of my goals in June is I'm dedicating almost an entire month of just putting out content and creating content. And I kind of struggle with content creation, right? Because if I have an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, I could either go build systems, processes, and scale companies, or sit down and write. So my natural tendency is to go build as opposed to creating. And I know like where some of my power is and what my next level is in the content creation. Is really because I have things to say and I know it will flow, but for some reason, right, it's not my I just haven't built that habit and that process of getting into flow with writing.
What got me over the hump was because everybody thinks they have a book in them, right? But they don't do it. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of it was perfectionism. And I didn't write because I guess I was afraid it wouldn't be awesome, but I wanted it to be awesome. Like I want to write Lord of the Rings or something like that. But I'm not capable of that. And I finally read Seth Godin. He wrote a book called Lynchpin.
Yeah.
And it was about, look, man, if you don't ship the product, it's better if you shipped something mediocre. Like at least you made the thing.
Yeah.
And he even said, I'm not the greatest writer in the world, but I'm selling a lot of books because I get it done. Mm-hmm. I hit send.
Yeah.
And so I literally went to a coffee shop and sat down. And I'm like, I'm not getting out of this chair until I write I said crappy, chapter about something. I'm not going to the bathroom. I'm not ordering another coffee. I'm going to write a crappy chapter. It's going to be terrible, but at least I'm going to get it done.
How long did that take you?
I did it 2 Saturdays in a row. I sat there. Maybe it took me an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then I followed up the next week. And I sent the 2 chapters off to a publisher, and I'm like, I tried. HarperCollins said, we really like this. Do you have an outline? And I was like, I can by tomorrow. And that's Unoffendable, which has sold hundreds of thousands of copies.
Wow.
But literally, I didn't know what I was going to write about. I just was like, I'm going to get it done, though. And I'm going to send it up. I'm going to try. And that really unlocked me to the thing where I don't have to be perfect. If you have things to say, just get it out there and let it be a blessing to people. Mm-hmm. So literally, if that's your stance as you go into your season of content creation, I want to be a blessing to people.
Yeah.
That's all. You're not needy. You're not. And that's a big help for me in radio. There's a lot of needy people on stage. There's a lot of needy people behind microphones.
Yeah.
But you can't really love people if you're needy. You're free to love people and be you can think, how can I be a blessing to these people in front of me today? That's all.
That's so good. You can't really love people if you're needy, right? It's difficult to love people when you're, and I found that to be true because I've thought about this concept of strings attached. I feel like in almost every interactions human beings have, there's some sort of string attached. Uh-huh. Like even in showing a loving gesture, a phone call, we think we're doing these outward focused things, but really based on results, like if we give our mother, if I provide some financial assistance to my mom,
yeah,
but if she doesn't take it the right way or doesn't appreciate it the right way. And if it bothers me, then I had some level of string attached there.
Yeah.
And so I feel like as human beings, we have this web of just strings attached in all these relationships, and they're invisible. And that's what causes a lot of these issues in relationships is we think we're showing up, but we're really, everything is conditional, right? Everything is conditional. It's a very transactional, very transactional. There was a post by a guy, Mace, that I saw, and I replied a comment on it, and he talked about how Christians can become very transactional, especially at church.
Yeah.
And I mentioned, and he said it was very rare to find Christians that truly loved. Mm-hmm. And what I found is even acts of love most of the time have strings attached. Even going, like if we give to a church or if we donate our time, give of our time, if we don't get the response from the pastor or the church that we want, we get offended.
Right.
So it's like, is it really ever truly outward focused?
Well, okay, so it would be if they couldn't do anything for you. Mm-hmm. Which is exactly what Jesus tells us how to love God, is you do things for people who can't do anything for you. That's why it's the least of these. Like they're not in a position. That's God's love language, is you serving someone who can't do anything for you. Jesus literally is like, don't invite people to your party that can invite you back. Invite people who can't. I mean, it's literally saying this is how you love God, because it's not transactional. What do you get from that? And that's him saying, well, if you love them, you must love me, because why else would you do that? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's actually, you're pinpointing something I think it's, again, in the genius of Jesus telling us how to live. But that practice of doing things for people who can't do anything for you helps you grow up. And it proves that you can trust God. You're going to be okay. You also realize it's fun. And you know what? It's like one of these things where you start to become a different person. So that was what Willard was so big on. It was like, it's not about willing yourself every day to not do this and to do that, gritting your teeth and summoning the willpower. It's like, no, it's about becoming a different sort of person.
Yeah.
You can't just say, I can't right now. I can't go, I'm going to go do a triathlon. Mm-hmm. But I could become a triathlete. It's going to take some practice. I need to become the sort of person that can do a triathlon. And I can. But that's the difference between just summoning your willpower, because your willpower is not going to rise to the occasion every time.
Yeah.
But being a different sort of person,
well,
now it becomes a more natural thing. That's growing up.
And that comes from the spiritual formation process,
Yes.
right? It comes through staying in the Word regularly, like daily having that heart shift. And then it comes from practicing and developing new habits.
Yes.
Right? New habits which eventually shift your character and
100%.
who you are. And your person, even a shift in personality. And it's through healing past trauma and wounds, which shifts your soul and allows you to love or allows you to be more present with people. So it's like there is a process to become free and a
Yes.
process to become powerful in relationships and connected.
Yeah.
And people, like part of my journey is I see so many struggling Christians that they read the Bible sometimes, they're going to church, but their life's still a mess, and it stays a mess,
Yeah.
and it doesn't shift, and they're 60, 70 years old and wondering, like, I was waiting for Christ to change me.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I think we like theology because we can go, I checked that box. I believe in the atonement or the whatever. I could check all these things. Therefore, I'm going to get to go to heaven when I die. But that's not really the message of the kingdom.
Yeah.
It's way better than that. It's like it's a way of living that starts now.
Mm-hmm. It's bringing heaven on earth, and that's saying. So I'm reading. I'm drawing a blank. It's it's tied directly to that. It's a beautiful. Oh crap! It'll come to me, and it's about that process. Christians view that the goal is heaven.
Yeah. Yeah. No, like when Jesus said, you know, whoever believes in me will have eternal life, he's talking about the Greek there. He's talking about a quality of life. Mm-hmm. And it starts now. We can step into this now. It's his kingdom.
Yeah.
So it's by obeying the things that he told us to do. That's how you change. So we do get frustrated because we see Christians that aren't any different than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And they go to church and they checked off the things, but he wants us to actually do the stuff. Yeah. It's not opposed to grace. And that's the Willard thing. It's like grace isn't opposed to effort. It's opposed to earning. But the effort, we're supposed to put forth effort.
Yep.
Like, we're supposed to love our enemies. We're supposed to pray for people who drive us crazy. We talked about that today at RuckCon. Like, using traffic as forgiveness practice is a great way to grow into it. Yeah. But that's actually how you change, so that people can look at you and go, you're different. There's something about you. You're not just like everybody else. Like, there is a change. There's a sweetness to a person getting older when they're growing in that way.
Yeah.
Then they aren't as needy. And they don't have to make everything transactional. And that frees you up creatively to make content, because you get bound up thinking, I need to be significant, or I want to write like this person, or I want to do videos like that person. I'm trying to earn favor with people. Well, that's very constricting creatively.
Yeah.
But what's freeing for me doing radio, I'm thinking in the morning, instead of how can I be cool, I'm thinking somebody just is going to get in their car after doing a long night working at a hotel, doing a shift, or a long day as a maid, or somebody who's cleaning at a home for older people. They're going to get in their car. What can I tell her that would just be deeply encouraging? Well, now I got ideas. I got lots of ideas. Now I can pop out 20 things a day. But it's the mindset of, I just want to be a blessing to people. Quit being cool. The weird thing is, then in my case, my platform explodes.
And your platform is in the explosion process, right? Like you're becoming, and I don't see it as intentional, right? The desire just to be seen by other people.
Promise.
And where do you think your desire came from to help people? Because I can tell your heart's in an effective place to really serve people. Where do you think that came from? I'm just curious.
Well, since my dad was a pastor, and he knows, we talk about all this and it's life, but
yeah,
there's this huge disconnect between on-stage Christian and our home. Just our home was traumatic and terrifying. And so, but it was Bible on stage, and wow, your dad's a great man of God, and wow. And I think for me, I'm like, there's not going to be that disconnect for my kids. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not going to say religious stuff to earn favor. I just don't want to do that. It makes me sick. It makes me, if I think I'm going to say something I don't mean. So I'm not impressed by stage people. There's a lot of talented people. It doesn't mean you're a great person if you can look like a great person in Christian terms on stage. I want to know people.
Yeah.
See how they treat their wives, see how they treat their kids. I want to get to know people. But to answer your question, I think it's that desire not to play act and to not be that guy. Mm-hmm. It's like, how can I come underneath you and be a blessing to you? Which, to be a blessing, it's a Christian term, but it just means to add value to someone's life. That's all.
Yeah.
How can I add value? And God's taking care of me. So there hasn't been a big plan. I never had a big plan. And I'm probably like the opposite personality type from you on that stuff. I'm disorganized, and I'm not long-term thinking. I'm literally just trying to get through the day, but that's kind of a sweet thing too.
Yeah. Well, I think you've embraced who God made you as, which is really powerful. It's very authentic. We do a lot of work. We have an advanced 5-day event that we do. It's called The Forge. And in that event, we do a lot of exercises around taking off masks, the masks that we've learned to operate with.
Yeah.
And the way that you do that is we do pretty intense feedback sessions where guys will stand in front of each other and literally over and over, you'll stand in front of a guy and give feedback on what your experience is of this guy. Because innately, we know when somebody's wearing a mask or acting inauthentic or acting arrogant or these things are coming up, we think people don't see.
Right.
And then so in this experience, we actually we have the guys give direct feedback. I experience you as arrogant. I experience you as closed off. I experience you as insecure. I experience you as, it's pretty brutal, but it starts to shatter the mask that they think they've been operating with and they have been operating with, to the point where they can start to really reflect and go, man, who am I? Like, what have I learned to operate with? Because as a kid, right, we learn to do what other people like.
Yeah.
So, hey, smile. Right. So I don't even tell my kids to smile for photos. It's like, don't act fake for other people.
Yeah.
Like, there might be a time to like put on a nice suit and look good. But we start young by training our kids to start to put on a front.
Right.
Like, hey, we're at church. Don't do what you were just doing. And then they're like, oh, that's how I'm supposed to operate. You operate one way in front of other people than you actually normally are.
Yes.
And then we have a bunch of human beings that are now operating inauthentic, not really being, and that word can be overused, but not really showing up as their true self. They have a front that they put on.
Yeah. So Jesus, when he's telling us to fear God alone, that means we don't have to be concerned about what everybody thinks about us. Yep. I mean, I care about what people think about God, but I can't be consumed with what everybody thinks about me. I just can't do it. And because if I need that approval, it's that same thing. We're putting up these fronts because we think this is going to win us some sort of respect or approval or something.
Yeah.
But if that's not really that big of a deal in my life anymore, I don't have to do that.
What do you think helped you? Because most people have an addiction to approval. At one of our events, we even had a guy, and he was kind of had that cool guy mask on, a great guy, but he acted like he didn't care about what other people thought about him, like very, very outspoken about it. And then as we dug in, he did that because it worked for him.
I hope you're enjoying this video. I'm the founder of Rise Up Kings, the largest faith-based personal development organization in the country. And it's our mission to reach as many people as possible to help them live lives of excellence, all to glorify God. We do this through our content that you're watching now. We do this through our seminars. So if you're enjoying this, please subscribe and share. Let's get back to the video.
Like, he found out that if he didn't care what people thought about him, that he would be liked by other people even more.
Huh. Right. That's right.
So he's a really sharp guy, but he got that as a kid. So he realized if he kind of just doesn't care what people think, like, he'll actually get more attention from other people. And so he had no clue. And we dug in. He's like, oh, wow. I didn't realize that was even a thing. So how did you break free from the disease of the approval of others? Because and again, we're never perfectly free from that.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I think there's still some there.
Yeah.
But
so what are some of your thoughts around that? Like, how do you process through that? If you notice you're people pleasing, like what?
I notice if I get jealous,
okay,
somebody else is getting the attention.
Yeah,
that's pretty lame. But it's a warning sign to me, and it's gotten way better over the years, way better. But it tells me that I'm being insecure here. If I can't cheer on other people, even if they're bleedingly insecure. Like, and I see them getting attention, they're soaking it up. I feel like, but I do it better than they. Like, it's just a no-win. I actually prayed about that. It was years ago. I was doing a local radio show. I was a sidekick on a local radio show, and I remember chafing for significance, like just wanting to be recognized as awesome or something, wanting to be popular. And I remember walking, it was in Jupiter, Florida. I remember walking outside the baseball stadium there one night, and I was praying, and I asked God to just kill that. Just please kill it. I'm tired of this. The need for attention, the need to be significant. And I honestly think he answered my prayer. So I don't have a step process to that, but
what's interesting is you've put yourself, and maybe he's allowed that, but you've put yourself in the spotlight, which you have to choose at that point, right? With you being on radio and you having haters, you either stop being on radio, or you learn to deal with it, because you can't do both. It's the inner turmoil that must come from, right? Some of the, like, not being like people pleasing, but getting regular hate mail it just doesn't work. What was your, so you've been on the radio for how long?
Well, gosh, it's been a long time now, 20, 30 years.
23 years. So what are some of the, what's a couple funny messages or interesting messages that you've gotten?
Oh my word. Well, I was mentioning one today, like even from just the commercials I do for MetaShare, I'm just reading the thing I wrote. Like, you should call this number and find out about MetaShare. You can save some money. And I got a hate tweet that I memorized, and the tweet was, "Dude, you're the worst. Every time I hear your voice on the radio, I want to drive my Jeep into a tree." And so I mentioned that my response was, "Okay, but first, let me tell you about a health plan where you can save $500 a month." So it's constant, but people have pathologies.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people with everything. You're talking to everybody.
Yeah.
Why would you expect? Why would anybody expect? And that's a huge thing. I realized that in the radio community, Christian radio, everybody's like, "Can you believe what this guy said? Can you believe this legalist that wrote me? Can you believe?" Like, you're talking to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have some compassion on people. Mm-hmm. Like, you're here to serve. I want to serve them, and even if they're messed up and broken and judgmental, like, so, okay, I can pray for them, but praying for people. I've learned this, praying for people to get more attention than me. I've done that. That'll change you.
Wow.
But it's through doing the stuff that Jesus told us to do, like blessing our enemies, praying for the people that drive us crazy, will grow you up, and you'll become a different sort of person. So the weird thing, though, is after I asked God to kill that, I'm on like 200 stations now, U.S. and Canada.
Wow.
And it's my show. Like, I didn't intend for that to happen. I wanted to be a baseball announcer, couldn't see well enough. So I became a newsman, and they would leave me on longer and longer because they thought I was quirky and odd. And then eventually what happened was, long story short, the general manager took the host off the morning show and left me on by myself. And the ratings went up.
Wow.
And I didn't want to do it. I was mortified. Like, I'm not a host. I'm a sidekick, like a quirky, funny, like whatever, sidekick. But after asking God to kill that chafing desire for significance, it's really wild what's happened. I hadn't written books at that point. I was freed up then, not having that chafing neediness to write. So I could just do it. I can't believe what's happened. And it doesn't have to keep growing.
Yeah. It's interesting.
It's okay.
I think, and I share this with we have a lot of entrepreneurs that I mentor. And so a lot of their desires is to build wealth, right? To build wealth, to build success. And I truly believe that until they get their priorities straight, where they're not doing it for significance to prove themselves, they're not doing it to glorify themselves, right? They're doing it for the kingdom. That God, it's not going to be an easy process. And so I've seen it happen where for me, as I've gotten my priorities straight, and again, it's not going to be an easy process always, but they're going to, I believe that God is more likely to bless a man that is putting the kingdom first, and where his intention is that money is a byproduct and it can be used to serve the kingdom, not the primary aim.
Yes.
Because what our aim is underneath, it's like that matters. So a lot of the work that I do is like, okay, we got the surface thing. I want to build success, but why? What is the underlying aim of why you want success? How do we find that root? And is that root, is that glorifying God, or is that filling your own need to be seen or to be worth it or to prove yourself? And for a lot of entrepreneurs, most entrepreneurs I've met at some level have a desire for significance. And they've gotten good at building success and being ambitious, because that was me. Like I sought ambition. I was ambitious because I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to show that I could be successful. I could build something great. And so I had to really work through that, and I feel like God has been blessing us much more as my aim has been less on what can I get out of it myself versus like, Lord, cool, use this for your glory. I'm here for you, and everything seems to be flowing.
Not only will He bless you more, which I think is true, but I think you're probably just better at what you do too. That chafing drive for significance doesn't free you up creatively to think. It's always about what about me? Am I getting enough attention? Did people give me enough credit? when you can get past that, you actually get better at your job. It was Scotty Scheffler after he won the Masters. Did you see what he said? Something about,
No.
I just want to go home. He said, like, the jacket's great, all that, but honestly, this job isn't that great. He said.
Wow.
He said that.
Wow.
But it's because he loves his family. You know, they're expecting their first kid, but he's a believer. But I think the fact that it's not paramount to him to win makes him win. Because winning isn't, because you choke, like in sports, if everything lands on me throwing a strike here, my whole life, my whole significance, that's when you start throwing it into the stands, man. Like, that's when you can't hit a free throw anymore. Like, because your whole significance is riding on this. Like, you'll be better when it's not.
Yeah. Tell me a little. I was curious about this. Tell me a little bit about your health, kind of your health journey, or some of the challenges that you've had.
Yeah.
And when that started, and I read somewhere that, and I believe I've heard it where you've seen. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that story, actually.
Well, like my eyes, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was born with this. It's called nystagmus, and it's a neurological problem. So my eyes move back and forth. And to compensate, I've done this my whole life. I have to move my head back and forth, which looks like
To be able to see.
To be able to see.
Wow.
So if I'm really looking, and if I'm reading something, you'll see it dramatically.
Yeah.
If I'm like putting my credit card in at Starbucks, like what's the matter? Like, what's the problem? I drove up to a security gate guy, and he's like, "What's your problem, sir?" This was like a couple weeks ago. It was at like a Christian ministry where they had a gate with. I said, "I don't know. I have a neurological condition." He's like, "I'm so sorry." I was like, "I should know better." I was like, "Dude, it's all right. It's all right." But I was born with it. It's been my whole life. I actually went to college on a disability scholarship. Amazingly, like, I don't see terrifically well, but they gave me a driver's license. So, yeah, that hasn't helped me socially. It's made radio a nice place to be. I don't have to think about it. My brother was very successful with the ladies, I would say, in high school and stuff. I didn't have any dates. I just wasn't smooth or whatever. But I think a lot of that had to do with just lack of wanting to be seen or something. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're going to speak on stage in front of how many people tomorrow?
Yeah.
So you're a certain amount of people.
Yeah. The hundreds, yeah.
Yeah. So and you're doing this stuff, and it's just so cool when people would. And the reason I brought that up is some people would use that as an excuse of why they can't be successful, why they can't speak, why they're a victim to their quote unquote disability or diseases or issues. Like, hey, I can't speak on stage. I have this issue, or I talk too fast, or I don't speak clearly, or I have. Whatever reason they're giving, but you've used that as almost, I feel like I don't know. Have you used and a saying that we have is we want to use it more than it uses us.
Totally.
And everything in life. So how do we, even if it's something quote unquote negative or a challenge that we have, it's how do we use it more than it uses us?
Well, the first thing you do is self-deprecate on stage. This is something that you learn from comedians. They have to say that right off the bat.
You're hilarious when you do that.
Right? So I'll use that as a way to, and when you self-deprecate, it lets everybody relax.
Yeah.
And I want people to be relaxed. And I'm not trying to be cool.
Yeah.
So if they be like, this guy's kind of quirky and odd, I don't totally, well, that's fine. Like, then when you're also being vulnerable with it, so you own it, be vulnerable with it, it doesn't cause people to dislike you. It endears you to people. Like, just owning your weaknesses, or whatever it is, your vulnerabilities, just own it. I'm not talking about just like airing all your laundry or whatever, like just willy-nilly. But that's what I do think it's an opportunity. I think people connect over that kind of stuff. Otherwise, here's the thing. If I am on stage and I'm talking, or I'm on the radio, and I'm like, I did this and I did that and I blah, 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 blah. Well, then people will go, he's really awesome. But if I show my weaknesses and I talk about the Lord and how genius he is and like his way of living, and I'll get done hopefully, and they'll be like, God's really awesome. right? Because if he can do something with me, that's why I want to tell the story about like whatever I have now. You could look in a bio and go, wow, great resume or whatever. Like, yeah, but here's how that happened, so that you can see how good God is.
It's great. Yeah, I was listening to a motivational video, and I think it was Muhammad Ali. I'm not sure, but he says, "Let me show you how great I am." You know that quote? He's in this it's a famous quote. So he says, "Let me show you how great I am," and he's like talking. He's like, oh, I can. One of his sayings is he says, He says, so I was walking in the room. I turned off the light, and I was in bed before the light turned off. Right, and so he's like, "Let me show you how great I am." And I was listening to that, and this is like last week. I'm like, I wrote it on the whiteboard. I'm like, something's wrong with that. So I switched it. Let me show you how great he, capital letters, is.
Yeah.
Right. Let me show you how great he is. Right. So I'm like, man, that's where it's at.
Totally.
And so we can get obsessed with our own greatness and our own excellence. But the goal is that like it glorifies God. And that's why I'm open with a lot. Like I have tinnitus, and so I have a constant ringing in my ear. And so in loud environments, I've been realizing more and more, like I start to get anxious. After about an hour of like a party, everything starts like overwhelming my senses.
Yeah.
And I've been wondering, I'm like, what is going on? I have to literally walk to the bathroom. I go in the bathroom, I look in the mirror, I kind of just relax for a minute, and I go walk back out. Because something's like happening, and I realize it's my tinnitus. So I just have constant ringing, and so real loud noises, real loud environments start to create anxiousness in me. And so, but I'm in podcasts, I'm in these events, I'm teaching for sometimes 8-12 hours. So it's like, so I'm having to work through these challenges because it's kind of socially, I want to go into a hole after a couple hours.
100%.
But now I'm in 8-12 hours, tons of people. And so I'm learning to work with it. And then I was just processing, and I'm like, I wonder what this is for. Like I believe Romans 8:28, right? God works out everything for the good of those that love him, who have been called according to his purpose. I'm like, there's some blessing in this. So I'm like, what is this blessing? Because even in this room, I was like, it's too echoey. It's making me close down. I need it less echoey. It's like putting me in my head.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm like, no, this is cool. There's some gold here. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
There's some cool blessing.
Yeah. I think that comes with actually trusting God, because you've seen him do stuff before.
Yeah.
And that's why telling our story, for me talking about how things happen, like I'm doing it so that people can go, oh, yeah, I can relate to that. He actually is good.
Yeah.
And so when things happen, I don't need to be anxious about it. I know he's good. I know it. So one thing that's very anxiety producing, though, is that drive for significance, because it's always making you anxious. Am I getting enough of this? Am I doing enough of that? Like, so being able to move past that.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about. So you have a. Are you talking about the book that you're writing, or?
I wasn't going there.
Okay.
But it is true though that you live a more relaxed life if you're willing to kill that chafing for significance.
So would you say? So what do you feel like the cause is? Because I read something recently that anxiety is one of the number one causes that people are currently going to the hospital or to the doctor's office. So anxiousness, anxiety.
Yeah.
So what do you? I have my ideas, but what do you feel is causing that? You talked a little bit about that, the desire for success or proving themselves or being seen.
Yeah. So desire for control. That's where worrying is actually a form of control. We think somehow if I feel this way, it's going to help. Like it doesn't. It's this weird sense of control. Like I've heard it likened to like when people go bowling, you release the ball and then you start gyrating and leaning because you want it not to go in the gutter or whatever. It's like the ball's gone, man. Like, but you still have this sense of control somehow. Like you still have some input on where the ball goes. Yeah. But that's such a human thing. Dropping that is incredibly freeing. Like going, I don't control tomorrow or next week or a month from now or next year. There's certain things I do not control. And I'm going to focus just on today in terms of what I had heard Tim Ferriss. He made me think about this, the time management guru guy. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're in that.
I read the 4-Hour Work Week when I was young, man. I'm like, this is great.
I didn't make it through it, but I heard most of it.
Sure.
But one of the things he said, he had a personal assistant in India, and he had her like take care of everything. Like he'd farm everything out to her. Yeah. And he was talking to her one morning. He was like, you know what? I'm actually really worried about something. I need you to worry about something for me today. And she's like, okay. And he told her what it was. She's like, I'll worry about that for you, sir. He said it actually worked.
Wow.
Like outsourcing the worry to somebody else. So just knowing they're worried about it, I can just focus on this other stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's brilliant, but it's scriptural in terms of like, we're literally told to cast our cares on him because he cares for us. Like literally you can outsource it to God. I cannot handle the election right now. Mm-hmm. It's not up to me. Like I can't figure all this stuff out. There's all these things that we're anxious about, but we can't do anything about it. We can't control it. So leave it to God. And literally the genius of what Paul's saying there, it totally jibes with modern psychology or anybody worth their salt. He says, be anxious for nothing, pray about everything, tell God what you need, and then thank him for what he's done. Mm. And then the peace of God, which exceeds our understanding, will guard our hearts in Christ Jesus. I mean, it'll literally guard our physical hearts. Our physical hearts suffer from anxiety. Mm. But tell him what you need. Let him handle it. You outsource it to him. And then you shift into gratitude. And it's very difficult to be grateful and anxious at the same time.
Yep.
We know that. Another genius thing from the Bible. All the time, I used to wonder, is God on an ego trip? Because we're supposed to praise him all the time. Like, God, you're so great. You're so great. We'll sing another song. Like, why is he so needy? And the truth is, he's not needy. Yeah. He doesn't need anything from us. That's in there for us. Mm-hmm. Because when you're reminding yourself about the goodness of God, you're singing about the goodness of God, maybe with other people or by yourself, or you're reminding yourself, your anxiety level goes down because you remember how good he is. Mm-hmm. You're shifting totally mentally from anxiety to gratitude and trust. And that's just to keep praising God is a great way to go through life. Like, so there's a lot of very practical things I try to talk about, but it's not religious pie in the sky stuff. This is actual ways of putting your mind on the right thing so that you're becoming a less anxious sort of person. And that is entirely determined. Last point on that, I'm sorry, but
no, you're good.
It's just to answer your question more fully. What we're paying attention to determines who we're becoming. So what I'm paying attention to today determines what I'm going to be like tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Attention is everything.
Yeah.
You're paying attention. Marketers want your attention. They'll pay for it. Mm-hmm. But you only have this much. So where you're putting it, that will determine the kind of man I'm becoming down the line. Mm-hmm. So if I'm paying attention to the goodness of God, I'm in Scripture, like you said, I'm memorizing Scripture, I'm reminding myself about his goodness, I'm talking about it with people, that's going to affect who I'm becoming. Yep. If I'm paying attention only to the news, I'm going to be a nervous wreck. Mm-hmm. Anxious, nervous, and I've only got one life. I'm not going to go through a life anxious and nervous. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, what you focus on, you feel. It's part of your experience. We have so what tends to happen is, right, there's a life circumstance that happens, right? It could be any type of situation.
Yeah.
And then from that, we create some meaning, some story from that. And then from that story or that meaning that we gave it, then we derive an emotion. So an emotion happens based on that meaning, some feeling that we have. It could be anxiousness, fear, greed, pride, anger, right? That whatever shows up, and then from that emotion, right, or tied into that, then we derive a behavior. Yeah. Some behavior then flows. Yeah. We retract, we lean in, we fight back. Something happens. So that's kind of like the human experience, and that's our whole life experience. Is a circumstance or a situation leads to a thought, leads to some emotion that we feel. But the thought, right, or what we're focusing on is really driving that feeling, and that's I think what keeps people trapped in anxiety is they lack control and many times awareness of their thoughts.
So, like in Psalms, David talks to himself. Why are you so downcast, O my soul? Put your trust in God. When I am afraid, I will put my trust in God, he says. But why so downcast? Why am I feeling this way? Why am I nervous? He realizes he's feeling this way, and he talks to himself. Mm-hmm. And he reminds himself to put his trust back into God. And I'm going to praise God right now because I'm nervous. Literally, he says that. In Lamentations, Jeremiah, is seeing destruction of his people, destruction of his country. It's all going down the tubes. He can see the news. It's happening right now. It's all going down. And then he recounts it. He's lamenting it. It's Lamentations. And then he says, "Yet I call this to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love for us, we are not consumed. His faithfulness endures forever. His mercies are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness." He even turns to talk to God now. But he literally says, "Yet I call this to mind." I'm doing what you're saying. Like I'm grabbing this thought. I'm aware of my thoughts, but I'm going to call this other thing to mind, which is God's mercies always come through. His faithfulness never fails. Like that's a really strong move mentally. Like you're recognizing how you're thinking and you're correcting it and reminding yourself of the truth. Like I don't need to be scared. God's good. He's got my back. I mean, that's pretty strong.
Yeah, so good. I think it's necessary, especially for people that are, it's just necessary overall in life. But I was going to say for people that take risks or do big things, right? Just the leaning in. One of my favorite Bible verses is James 1, 2, 3, and 4. "Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. And perseverance must finish its work so you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." It's through the trials that we become mature and complete. And so it's through this process of learning to lean into him through these difficult times and focus, right, our thoughts and focused on the truth, right, and what you're just speaking about gives us peace, and that actually creates matureness.
Yes, and you become pretty fearless over time. You really do. I mean, it's not, again, this isn't happy talk. Yeah. It's like this changes you over time. And Jesus says to his disciples, "In this world you will have troubles, but be of good cheer because I've overcome the world." Like, I know you're going to have problems. Actually, a lot of them wind up getting executed. He knows that. Yeah. But be of good cheer. I can almost picture him like wink, wink, nod, nod, like, "Hey, I've overcome the world. I know how this ends. And you're going to be good." He takes him out on the lake, and it's his idea to go out there. And he goes to sleep on the boats. And they freak out because there's a storm. That was his idea. He had that plan. He was testing them to see how they would do, or he was letting them see how they would do. And they all freak out. He's like, "Guys, don't you realize?" He's effectively saying, even if the ship goes down, you're good. Even the worst case scenario, you're good. Yeah. Trust me. Like when you believe that, when you actually trust God, you don't have much to fear. The worst case scenario, he says it's gonna make sense in the end. Like you're gonna be very happy with me. Like in this world, you're safe with me. If you trust me, in this universe, you're ultimately safe. Like, well, that's a pretty strong hand to play.
So good. And so many people do not rely on that, right? So many Christians, they read it, they study it, they understand that we're supposed to trust and lean into him, and yet it's just so, for some reason, it's so difficult to give up their life and to trust him, even just in whatever circumstance is coming. But
if you think about it, and I know that's true, but who better to trust?
Agreed.
Seriously, like if we're ranking like the Fed, exactly. Like the governments, these other people, like
your Uber driver.
My Uber driver was awesome. He was really cool, but
What's as we start to wrap up, I'd love to what you wrote in your book, masculinity is really about protecting the vulnerable. How do you word it?
Yeah, it's about making people feel secure around you. Yeah.
It's an incredible conversation and part of, and so there's mostly men that listen to our podcast, and so this idea of like what is masculinity, how does it how does it play? How does it look like and play out in my life? And it's this idea of protecting those around us, protecting our wives, protecting our kids, protecting and serving, and being that lighthouse, being that oak tree for those that are in need, and those that are somewhat vulnerable.
Yeah, and I also emphasize, I call it the keeper of the garden. That's who we're supposed to be, the job that Adam was given. But it's also cultivating people. So I protect with my words. I build people up. That's what I want to do. I don't want my sarcasm to cut my wife down. She feels insecure when I do that. Like, I want her to bloom and flourish. Like, that's my role, whatever I have. And everybody has different skills and different abilities, but I think you can apply them to this idea of being a keeper of the garden, so that anybody who's in your sphere of influence is better off because you're there. They're more secure. And kids 7 years old can get it. Boys, when you tell them that, you talk about, you don't pick on people, you defend them, the vulnerable. That's what you're here for. They get it. So guys now in Christian schools, I'm hearing increasingly, are way into Andrew Tate. Christian schools, Christian universities, because they're not given a model definitively of what masculinity really is and why it's so awesome. So that's why I'm really fired up about this issue, having an actual vision for it that you can go, oh, I get it, the keeper of the garden thing. That's why sleeping around is a betrayal, because I'm actually not protecting the vulnerable. I'm using people. That's why. That's why having children and leaving is a betrayal of my role. It all fits, it all makes sense. And then you realize, well, Andrew Tate may be the most unmanly man on the planet because he uses people. He doesn't protect them. That's a betrayal of that role. But unless you have a vision for it, you can't know. So I just, 2 months ago, The Young Men We Need came out. So I rewrote it, shortened the chapters and stuff, but it's the same basic idea, because I really want high schoolers, teenagers, young men.
That's great.
Yeah, this is a desperate thing.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping people use any excuse to graduations or birthday, to give guys this book, because it'll get their attention quickly.
What age range would you say it's for?
I think there's 12-year-olds, smart 12-year-olds who could get it. It'll stretch them, but I think the sweet spot will be 17, 18. So it could be anywhere in there. It could be
Great.
it could be guys that are 30. I don't insult their intelligence.
Yeah.
But I did shorten it, and I get their attention too by explaining why this makes you more attractive to women. I want to get their attention and then explain why women resonate so much with this, and why it's because they get it.
So you're saying they become a high value man, not by sleeping around, but by actually taking care of women?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Actually being a source of security.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. That's good to know. So that book, so we're building out an entire year-long program specifically for 14 to 18-year-olds.
Cool.
That's going to be mentoring men, whether they're at homeschool or whether they're in regular school. It's going to be an hour-long program each week.
Brilliant.
That is guiding them on different topics, from masculinity to their faith to entrepreneurship, a whole because we realize there's a lack of mentorship happening. Even dads don't know how to mentor their 14-year-old kid.
Yeah.
They just don't.
Right.
And so they're not doing it. So they're not sitting down, having conversations, guiding them, teaching them specific things on how to be a man and what it means to love a woman, and how do you show up in a masculine way? How do you dive deeper into your faith? How do you read the Bible?
Yeah.
They're not mentoring that. I mean, very rarely do you meet a father that's intentionally mentoring and guiding their sons. And so we're going to help support, kind of fill that gap, and the fathers will know our process. So that might be a great addition.
Well, there's discussion questions in there too, because I was thinking along those lines.
Yeah.
But guys will take this and run with it if you give them what you're doing.
Yeah.
But also what I'm trying to do in this book.
Yeah.
It's such a blessing to have the vision for it. Oh, that's who I'm supposed to be. It frustrates me when people get so disgusted with young men. I get it. Who commits the crimes? Who does the most idiotic things? I get it.
Yep.
But if you're not given a model for who you're supposed to be, what the heck? Mm-hmm. And they're not. It's just, don't do this, don't be this. And then the church comes along and it's just let's do axe throwing. Well, that's not really the heart of masculinity, is it? And there's all sorts of guys that doesn't resonate with, but they can get this. Like there's musician guys too. There's philosophers and like nerds like me, and there's athletes, and but the church hasn't really said this is the beautiful part of masculinity very well. So I'm taking a shot at it, so you can
Great.
go. Now I get it. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope so.
What is as we close out? What would you say? What's important? What's important? Well, actually, a kind of random question. What's a job you would never want to do?
I think air traffic control would be bad for me and a lot of other people with my vision. Piloting, fighter. There's a whole host of, I think I could go with air traffic control.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, for sure. Very philosophical question. What should men be focused on right now? So if you were to give a piece of advice and say, hey, like if you kind of walk away with this, like this is a good life aim. Now,
Yeah.
let's pull into that. Like what would you say is a worthy life aim? Like Jordan Peterson talks about like responsibility being a life aim.
Yeah.
Like just everybody has a different perspective on what their life should be about and be aiming at. And we know it's Christ, so we'll set that as a foundation, right? Aiming to be more Christ-like. And would there be anything else that would be combed into that?
I have a big word about this, and that big word is loyalty. That's what God is looking for from us, is loyalty. He knows we mess up. He knows we have bad thoughts. He knows we do wrong things. But then we will slink away in shame, and we won't talk to him because we're ashamed of ourselves. That's the worst thing you could possibly do. Like, he does not want to be ignored. Wrestle with him, apologize, thank him for his goodness, move past the good. Guilt is only good to just move you right back to Calvary, leave it there, and be thankful. And that's all it's good for. And then you keep walking with him. So you loyally show up, whether you're feeling it or not. And I talk about this quite a bit in my book. It's called Blessed Are the Misfits, but it's about, and in the Men We Need to talk about this. But everything in our culture is about emotions. And they do that in church too. They make it about emotions very often in certain kinds of churches.
Meaning like they tend to gear worship towards emotional worship.
Yeah, trying to create these moments that make you feel these things. Well, if you're somebody who doesn't feel that, you feel like something's wrong with you, or maybe you're just so bad that God doesn't love you, or maybe he doesn't exist because I don't feel it. Like I think they're just, or you feel like you're not spiritual, like your wife is. She's feeling, she's enjoying it. You don't quite resonate with it, so you're not as spiritual. That is not spirituality. Spirituality is loyalty. God wants to partner with you in your life, and you get to partner with him. That's what he was looking for partners with Abraham. He's looking for partners with Adam and Eve. This is what he does. But if you walk away and you get ashamed and you don't stay loyal, like you've lost the plot. So just keep coming back. I do. We could all walk away in shame, but I don't do that. Keep coming. And you know what? He will change you over time, and your desires will start to change, and things will start to get squeezed out of your life that, like, because he's made you a different person. Because you stay loyal. You just keep coming back, whether you feel it or not. It's an incredibly wonderful that it's not all about emotion, because I can't control my emotions. I can't just make myself feel God. I don't feel him around 99% of the time. I don't even know how to describe that. But I can be loyal, and I can see where it brings blessings, where he has blessed me like crazy. So that's my big picture thing. Yeah.
So powerful. That was a very valuable way to end this. Yeah, I don't think I've ever actually heard that way of looking at spirituality as loyalty, and it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Man, It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.
I really appreciate you coming out here at 7 o'clock at night and being willing to jump in the podcast studio and then shoot back to the hotel.
I
And,
mean, it's fun.
yeah.
It's fun. I love talking about this stuff. So thank you for doing it. Someday I will. I have some horrifically embarrassing radio shocking. If we do this again,
Yeah.
I have a litany of moments on the air or on stage that you will shudder. Like, I cannot believe.
Oh, crap.
That is the cringiest. Oh. Yeah.
I cannot wait to hear that. So
Yeah.
that'll be episode number 3.
Yeah, when
then.
it
That would be, so let's make sure we
Bro.
do that. Because I love embarrassing moments. There's something special about them. This is next level.
of absolute humiliation. Yeah. I think that's helped too. That's it too. I think that's helped me.
Yeah.
I've had some major cringe things happen. After a while, it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna enjoy it.
That's so good. Likewise, I have also. Maybe we could share some stories on the
Yeah.
next one. Well, thanks again for coming out. It's been an honor.
My pleasure.
Thanks.